pretty breezy here this afternoon. I've just come out to see if the deer are here, but they're not. I have seen there is a fox just down there, and a few magpies, a crow, a few pigeons. Not really a great time of day to be deer spotted. Oh, she says, hang on a sec. They've just appeared. They must have heard me. Thought, no, don't go. I've just had a look through my bins. You've been eating poo, haven't you? Just had a look through my bins, and there's about 9 there. Seem to be mainly females. So it's the fallow deer rut at the moment, which means the males are getting their mates and they're collecting their harem, and there's a bit of fisticuffs between the dominant males, and the young males will be looking out for an opportunity to mate with one of the subordinate does. So it's quite an interesting time to be deer watching, but it's really, really breezy today, and they're just feeding on the corn, which has just started to come up in the field here. You can see behind me that sort of green fuzz. I think it's winter wheat from what I saw from the bag going into the back of the tractor. So yeah, nice to see the deer. Spiced bundt cake. Now, if you watched my vlog previously, you'll know that I didn't have a terribly good experience with my bundt cake last time, but I did a bit of reading around, and I think the problem was in what I was greasing the tin with, and also how I was turning it out, because I've read a few more recipes and tried to get a bit of a kind of consensus on what to do, and quite a few of them said you need to use a kind of animal fat, so like lard or shortening, and mix it with a sort of non-gluten flour. And I was sort of scratching around trying to do that, and then I realised I had some of this, which is shredded suet, which you put in kind of mince pies and Christmas puddings and stuff, but it's suet, so animal fat, but the little kind of worms are coated in rice flour. And I thought, aha, if I melt some of this down, I can then paint it on the inside of the tin, and hopefully that will stop it sticking. So I've got the mini oven on, and I've just melted some in a little pot, and it's kind of a bit kind of gloopy, but the flour is kind of already in there. So I'm going to paint this all over the inside like you're meant to. And in any case, the recipe I'm doing is actually a half quantity. And I was trying to work out, because the recipe says to use one of these size tins, and I was thinking there's an awful lot of batter in that. So I thought, well, you know, usual thing, there's only me and Rosie here, I can't really be eating an entire, well, obviously I can, but I probably shouldn't be eating an entire bundt cake. So I will just do a half quantity. The other good thing about painting this stuff on, so it goes on obviously melted, but then as soon as it hits the cold pan, it kind of instantly solidifies. So I'm hoping it won't kind of pond in the bottom, but we'll wait and see. I did try a bundt cake a little while ago, and I used this method and it worked, but who knows whether the bundt pan gods are going to be on my side. We will just have to wait and see. But you know, it's not exactly an expensive thing, shredded to it, so I'm happy to kind of give it a go. So I will just, that's all painted, it's in all the nooks and crannies, and like I said, I'm hoping the batter won't come too high up the sides or to fill the pan too much either, and won't kind of bubble up over the top and get a bit awkward. So we shall see. So that's all coated as far as I can tell. Right, so now I have to get on with the cake. I've got 1 stick of butter in here, which apparently is 4 ounces or 125 grams, so I'm going with that. I now need, I'm sorry, I've got the recipe written down here. I need 3/4 cup of ordinary sugar, white granulated, and 3/4 cup of soft brown. Don't know how I've got it on the scales. Comfort. There we go. So this goes obviously in the KitchenAid with the paddle beater, just to be mixed around. I'm going to measure out the dry ingredients now. So I need 1 3/4 cups of flour and a teaspoon of baking powder and some salt. And I'm going to use this, which is Stollen Spice by Steenberg's, which is really lovely. They do beautiful herbs and spices. Now this isn't exactly pumpkin spice. I was going for a pumpkin spice thing, and then I thought, oh, I've sort of missed the pumpkin boat. So I'm going with Stollen Spice, just because I bought it and may as well use it. So I'm going to put, in the recipe she uses kind of a mixture of cinnamon and cloves and nutmeg, and I'm just going to sort of approximate with this one, but it should be really yummy because balls and kind of those lovely spices always works really well together. So I'm just going to mix these around. There we go. So, oh, clunk. That's all mixed. And I'm going to add the eggs. My hens have finally started laying again. Well, the pullets have started and some of the older ones have finished molting, so they're throwing the odd egg now and then. Teaspoon of vanilla essence. Beat that in. Now, in the recipe she uses buttermilk, and in the usual haven't got that, so I'm going to cobble together something else. I'm using half a cup of, so I need 3/4 cup of buttermilk. Did I just say that? Anyway, so I'm using half a cup of milk and 1/4 cup of yogurt. And I now need to add half of the dry ingredients, half the buttermilk, half the dry ingredients, half the buttermilk. The recipe calls for 2 grated apples, so I'm just, I picked these from my garden. I've got this one apple tree that's still really got tons of fruit on it, and they're actually kind of coming into their own now. They've really swelled up with all the rain we've had. Skinny pigs can hear me preparing fruit. Yes, all right, hang on. So I'm keeping the skins on, and I will just grate these and then mix them in by hand into the batter. It's already fizzing up because of the yogurt and the baking powder, the bicarb in the baking powder. So if I can hang on to that. rise properly. I'm pleased I didn't make the full amount because that's pretty much filled the tin. So I'm just going to press it down. And having seen that, I think I will bake it for 40 minutes to start with and see what happens. It's had about 50 minutes in the oven, so I've just taken it out and I popped a cake tester skewer in there. Looks okay, so I'm going to leave it in here for about 10 minutes and then I will turn it out and leave it to cool completely. The weather has suddenly become absolutely glorious autumn sunshine. So, excuse the ducks quacking down there. I thought I would get on and plant some perennials for next year. It's quite nice to do things in autumn just because certainly ones I'm going to be planting now really kind of settle in and get brilliant root systems, and that means they really sort of take off when the spring weather comes and they can really sort of grow on the top growth. Quite often you find that they might look a bit measly and puny with their leaf growth, but when you pull out the seedling, there's sort of great forest of roots underneath. So it's quite nice to have some, and also it just means that, you know, if they go wrong you can always plant some more in the spring, but it just gives you a bit of an insurance policy, if you like. So I'm going to be growing just a few small half trays, as these are. I've got some of the geranium seeds that I collected in an earlier vlog. I have to look up which one that was, but I've got these geranium seeds. These are lavender seeds from my parents, who grow some amazing lavenders in their garden, and I'm hoping these, because they get an awful lot of bees on their plants, I'm hoping these will be sort of cross-pollinated and come up as their own sort of plants. So I'm looking forward to doing those, and I've also got some hollyhocks here just because I've got some hollyhock seeds, and hollyhocks are biennials, although most of mine seem to be perennial, short-lived perennials, and in fact I've got one that's about 9 years old now. But anyway, I'm going to grow some just because sometimes if they get kind of a good bit of growth on, they can kind of flower the same year rather than having to sort of put all their vegetative growth on first before flowering the following year. So I'm going to do some now. Just depends on what kind of autumn we have. I'm not going to sort of heat these, I'll just put them somewhere, I'll put them under cover so they're not getting saturated and pounded by the rain, which will inevitably happen. I'm not going to be doing anything fancy with them. So it is worth doing. I've got some peat-free compost here. Always go for peat-free. There's nothing in the garden that's, worth digging up our peat bogs for. And just make sure it does say peat-free on the bag, because it's a bit like organic food. If it doesn't say it on the bag, it won't be. So I'm going to just, I'm sure the vast majority of you know how to plant seeds, but what I'm going to do is just fill the trays with some compost. You can see it's lovely and loose, this compost. I'm not mixing any kind of grit in with it, but you could if you wanted to. They don't need a huge amount of nutrients, because obviously most of the nutrients are in the seeds themselves. They just need enough to you know, give them enough to be going on with until we get to the spring. I sell quite a lot of plants, and again it's really good to have some sizable seedlings to be able to put out on the stall when I finally start having eggs again. And one more thing, we're just about to go into lockdown here in the UK, so getting out in the garden, getting outside, doing some things with earth and soil and growing things, I think is a really, really positive thing to be doing when we're maybe feeling a little bit bogged down with other stuff going on in the world. So I've filled those almost to the top. I will be sprinkling a little bit more once they're once the seeds are in. Kind of pat them down a little bit gently. You don't want them too sort of friable, just because when you water them, you know, they can sink down quite a lot and kind of wash the seeds too far down. Hello duckles, I'll show you my wellies. So I'm going to just broadcast the seeds. Oh sorry, it maybe jumps a spider. Broadcast the seeds on top. Now as you can see, because I collected these from the, oh, the smell is just amazing. Because I collected these from the flower heads, there's still quite a lot of flower heads mixed in with the seeds, but that's fine because it helps me identify which seeds they are, because they've got the little lavender seed heads. So I'm just going to try and sprinkle them as kind of evenly as I can. Now there's absolutely masses of seeds in here, but obviously they won't all come up, mainly because, you know, some might just not germinate because genetically they're not viable. Others, you know, might not do so well or get, you know, nibbled on or something like that. So I'm just going to press them lightly down into the compost. Now if you've got any grit, which I don't, you can just sprinkle grit over the top of them. Most seeds don't want to have any light, and even those that do, kind of, I've found that the grit just does kind of weigh them down a little bit, so it's no bad thing, but I don't have any, so I'm going to have to use some compost. Squabbling chickens. I'm going to do the same with the hollyhock seeds. Now these are obviously going to be quite big seedlings, but when you come to pricking out, you can just, you know, pop any sort of stray seedlings into separate pots so that you can bring those on as well. Try not to have too many. I mean, some people you know, plant them really evenly, but I don't, which probably won't surprise many of you. And here's my geranium seeds, and again these are all open pollinated, so they should make some really good kind of crosses. Again, just a little sprinkling over the top. I'm just going to sprinkle a bit of compost. Pat them down. And then, important thing, label them, which I'm not terribly good at doing, which is why I always do seeds, which I know I'm going to recognise the young plants, because then it doesn't really matter if I lose the label. But I am going to try and find some, excuse me, I had a bit of a rummage and I found these lovely labels, which, oh, is that the light? They're rather nice, aren't they? Anyway, obviously you don't need to use fancy chamfered wood labels like these. You can cut up bits of milk bottle, or you know, any kind of bit of wood stick that you've got. Any kind of flat lollipop sticks are really good as well. But I'm just going to write on these. What have I done? Lavender, hollyhock, and geranium. There we go. Now I'm going to sit these in a tray of water. I don't really want to water them because I don't have a rose. I really need to get myself sorted out. Anyway, I've long since trodden on, lost, broken the roses on all my watering cans, so I'm going to sit these in a tub of water, a big tray of water, and make sure the ducks don't climb in because they are a bit prone to doing that. And then the water can obviously soak up. If I'll put the water up to just below the top of the seed trays, and then it can just sort of soak up through the compost, and then that'll keep them nice and moist. I'm then going to put them in my quail hutch, which I think I showed you right back at the very start actually, and that will just keep them sheltered, but you know, it's a little bit of light. Obviously they don't need a huge amount, but I could just keep an eye on them there and they won't get too hammered by the elements. So I'm going to get on and do that. You can see all this catmint's gone over now, so I'm going to there's a seed, so I will cut some of this back and just lay it on the borders so that it can self-seed a bit, but I will sow some of the seeds into compost as well, because they make really good bee plants and they're always quite popular on the plant stall. Hundreds of seeds here. This time of year it's also quite a good idea to take any plants that have been stuck in the same sort of compost all summer, like these parsley plants here, who frankly deserve a medal for the mistreatment they've had, and also if you want stuff to grow on for over the winter, it's quite a good idea to just give them some new compost or refresh the compost they've got, and so hopefully they'll sort of put down some good roots while it's still warm enough to do so, and then you'll get lovely strong plants in the spring. So that's what I'm going to do here. So this has gone from a kind of 3-inch pot and I'm going to put it in a 5-inch pot. So just a bit of compost in the bottom and then pop them in. There we go. I've just put the maple glaze on the apple bundt cake, which, as you saw, came out perfectly. So clearly the way forward is kind of animal fat and rice flour. So I've just come in from the garden and I'm going to sit down and enjoy my slush cake with my cup of tea, and this concludes the vlog. I hope you enjoyed it. Neddy's a bit tired because he had a play date with his little chum this morning, so he's flat out on the sofa. But I hope you enjoyed the vlog and I look forward to seeing you next time.